It is fantastically close, although I think from what we are hearing from the count, I think it is possible now to say that Labour have won uh, the West Midlands mayoralty, that Richard Parker is going to be the new mayor. This is because there are signs from the Labour camp that they are getting ready to celebrate, and sources are also telling uh, colleagues there that at Sandwell, and it's gone down to that one area in the greater Birmingham area, it's gone down to that one area, and Mr. Parker has picked up enough of votes over the current mayor of the West Midlands, the Conservative Andy Street, to take the seat. Now we're going to wait for the declaration, but that now is the expectation in the West Midlands. And as you say, Daryl, that will be a seismic result. It really puts the cherry, if one can call it that, on a cake of humble pie for the Conservatives in these whole sets of local elections. It hasn't gone well for them anywhere. The one glimmer of hope they have is that they did hang on in Tees Valley, that Ben Houchen hung on, but he too saw a swing against him of pretty dramatic proportions, which, if repeated, would have meant that the Conservatives would have lost the local MPs in that Teesside area. And now what we're seeing is, again, in the crucial area of Birmingham, a big swing. And another factor, of course, Daryl, that people will be talking about when they go through this result is that there is a candidate who, because of Gaza, has been taking a large number of votes, and it's assumed a lot of those votes have come from Labour. So he's in third place, but that does suggest that without Gaza, if you like, Labour's win would have been even more comfortable.
Yeah, it's a really interesting subplot to the story, isn't it? Ahmed Yacoub, who is the candidate endorsed by George Galloway, who has fielded candidates in several local elections over the last in this round. Of course, won Rochdale himself. I was there that night as he did, and spending some time in Rochdale in that moment. There's a picture there. It came quite clear of these areas with high Muslim populations, with a real strong sense of feeling about what's happening in Gaza, looking to exercise a protest, not just about what's happening in Gaza, really, but also about how they perceive Labour, Keir Starmer in particular, to have handled that question. Ahmed Yacoub seemingly doing very well in Birmingham, which is a place that Labour will now be feeling pretty vulnerable. As you say, Adam, it looks as though it does seem, with those numbers developing tonight, that it hasn't been enough to deny Richard Parker a victory over Andy Street. As you say, we're waiting for the official declaration. We're just seeing some images now of people arriving in the room. Quite actually, often one of the sort of I think perhaps this is why people are being more confident in saying that Labour are on course to claim this victory, is because you actually, it's just Labour delegates that are in that room at the moment, and then the first delegates to the front of the stage, looking to be the ones to get themselves on TV to cheer on their candidate, tend to be the ones that have won. So that's a pretty strong indication, if nothing else. Adam, I wonder if we should just while we do wait for the confirmation of that result, just dwell on Andy Street, because he's a fascinating character, isn't he? And sort of epitomises what's happened with these regional mayors, which is that personality, them as people, has become more important perhaps than their party affiliation, and particularly in the case of Andy Street, who has actively tried, it seems, to distance himself from the government.
Yeah, I think that's very correct about Andy Street. Of course, he's someone who came into politics quite late. He was the managing director of John Lewis, successful managing director of John Lewis, decided to go into politics because he's from the West Midlands area. And has throughout really made it clear that he'll work with a government of any colour, and has in this campaign, as in previous campaigns, not run with Conservative branding, the oak tree and the blue literature. He's had his own literature, which is green. And if you talk to Andy Street, he is one of those politicians who will probably not dwell on which particular party he belongs to. In that sense, he's slightly different from Ben Houchen. But again, the message that Ben Houchen, as the mayor there, who managed to hold his mayoralty, he also just says, look, I'll deal with anyone. I represent the area. I don't represent the central party. I'm not Rishi Sunak's man, and that, I think, has been important to those people who've managed to build their standing as mayors. Another one, of course, is Andy Burnham, who has been made it clear that he doesn't necessarily take orders from Keir Starmer, and he stands up for Greater Manchester. And actually, both Burnham and Street have been talking about what they are going to do to try and mitigate the effects of the cancellation of the extension of HS2. And I do feel that when people analyse this result, yes, they'll look at the Muslim vote. They may look at the Reform vote, although it doesn't seem to be that high in this area. But that cancellation, announced at the Conservative Party conference, was seen as a message from the Prime Minister in Westminster that people didn't really care about the north of England, and they certainly didn't care about Birmingham and Manchester that were going to be connected. So I think the HS2 result, whether or not economically it was the right decision, it will play a part in this. And of course, we know that Andy Street, when that became clear during the Conservative Party conference, he's quite open that he thought at that stage of considering resigning from the Conservative Party and completing his term as an independent. Well, he's going to be thinking that this is going to make his position harder because it is, if you like, a totemic victory for the Labour Party and a totemic defeat for the Conservatives. That said, there wasn't a great deal of love lost personally between Rishi Sunak and Andy Street. But of course, the worry for Rishi Sunak will be that Conservative MPs in the area, and remember, the East Midlands has also gone to Labour, will start thinking, well, if we carry on as we are, am I going to be safe, or am I going to be like Andy Street and, kicked out after a number of years of service? And so that does raise the question of looking for options. Although, of course, I think it's important to say that the mood music from MPs as these results came in, which pretty much confirmed what we were thinking from the opinion polls and from the by-elections, was that the people who wanted Rishi Sunak gone and who could have tried to build up the momentum amongst Conservative MPs for a confidence vote, that they had decided not to do that, perhaps because they didn't think they would manage to get as far as the 53 letters that they needed, but also perhaps because there is a mood now amongst some Conservatives of wanting Rishi Sunak to go down with the ship, to own this defeat, whether it's his fault or not, so that they can then start moving forward to put their own candidates forward to take the party to the right. And the argument they're going to make, of course, is that if we'd had votes from Reform, we would have done better. Now, you can argue about whether that's true or not, but that's clearly an argument which we're already seeing shaping up from some of the people in that right wing of the party.
The Labour MP Liam Byrne has posted a picture cheering alongside Richard Parker just in the last couple of minutes. He's, of course, a long-standing Member of Parliament, represents Birmingham. Hodge Hill, I think he's the Member of Parliament.
Yeah. Well, he was the man who was defeated by Andy Street for the mayor. So it would be quite sweet for him to see Labour coming in, although, of course, it's not going to be him.
Indeed. The Hannah Al-Othman, who is the Sunday Times Northern correspondent, she's reporting tonight that it looks as though Labour have won by a few hundred votes in this contest. We're still waiting for the sort of official result from the final area, Sandwell, the final sort of constituency, as it were, to deliver its results. Labour claiming a victory, and Hannah Al-Othman saying that it could be within hundreds of votes. And just to put that into context, we're talking here about an area with 2 million plus, above 2 million in the electorate. So that is how narrow and how tight it is. And actually, it's interesting, just as we wait for the official declaration, which we will bring live to you on Times Radio tonight, a break from our normal programming as we bring you the result of the West Midlands mayoral election. Those tight margins, Adam, and what they do to psychology is everything. I was in Blackpool. Was it last night? No, it wasn't. It was the night before. It feels like it's been one long night since about Thursday afternoon. I was in Blackpool overnight, and we had this sort of fascinating subplot. Labour, of course, winning with an enormous swing, but this fascinating subplot about who would come second between Reform UK and the Conservatives. 100 votes in it, just over. And the psychology, Adam, of the Conservatives coming second rather than third there seems to be sort of really, really important in what you've just said there. Those plotters standing back and standing down for the weekend, at least.
Yeah, and for Reform, it's a case of nice try, no cigar. I mean, we've probably, when we see how Reform have performed in these elections, with only, I think, a couple of councillors and not getting second place anywhere, I think it just underlines that perhaps if you take a sort of non-internal Tory party view, we talk about them a bit too much, frankly. In terms of their political influence. I mean, the people who've done really well from other parties in these local elections are the Greens and above all the Liberal Democrats, who are coming well ahead, and of course also have representation, significant numbers of councillors in the case of the Greens and the Liberal Democrats, significant number of MPs. So at the moment, it's just not happening for Reform in the end, except they can take votes away from the Conservatives, which makes Conservative MPs more vulnerable, which explains why some Conservatives want to appeal in that direction in the hope of getting those votes back. But, you're right that had it gone the other way and 117 votes ahead by Reform of the Conservatives in Blackpool South, we wouldn't have heard the end of it, and it would have been making headlines because, their claim, as we've heard from Richard Tice, is that they are now the real party of opposition. It's not borne out by the facts, but it's the sort of thing that make headlines, particularly in some of the right-leaning newspapers. But again, we have to remember that, as you're saying, there is a massive difference between winning by one vote and losing by one vote, or a few hundred in this case. And the real difference is when you're talking about winning, not a battle for second or third place, as Reform are talking about, it makes a difference because it's who is the person and who is the party in power. And, one point we've got to bear in mind is that as a result of these elections, Britain's three major cities, London, Manchester, and Birmingham, all have Labour mayors. And that certainly will be taken as sending a message about the mood of the country.